now I've asked my daughter to read the story for all ages. Try not to trip or get lit on fire on my way up to the podium. Okay, this story for all ages, The Peacock and the Crow. Once there lived a crow who did not like his feathers. She always admired the colorful feathers of the peacock and wanted to be one among them. You all look so dull and plain. Look how beautiful the peacocks are. I so wish I were a peacock, she would say to her fellow crows. One day, the crow saw many peacock feathers on the ground. Seeing those peacock feathers, an idea struck. She gathered them and stuck them into her wings and tail, and a few up from her head to look exactly like the peacock. Now I am as gorgeous as a peacock, she said to herself. And so she went to join the flock of peacocks, but was mocked and thrown out. The peacocks clearly understood that she was not one among them. Putting on peacock feathers will not make you a peacock, they said to her. Sad and humiliated, she returned back to her fellow crows, but none of her fellow crows wanted her company after all her insults. To add insult to injury, they noticed peacock feathers hanging out from her wings and tail and mocked her. Then an old wise crow came and told him, we should accept us the way we are. Don't try to copy others blindly. I hope you have learned your lesson. The crow realized her mistake and regretted what she did. She tore off the entire peacock feathers, stuck to her feathers, and accepted herself again as a crow. Then she went and apologized to her fellow crows for insulting them. They became friends again. The crow was finally completely happy. The moral of the peacock and the crow story, we should accept us the way we are and learn to improve ourselves positively. Now words for reflective silence. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. In the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Mom. Yes. I didn't introduce you. Okay, even though you've been standing here the whole time. Okay, happy Mother's Day, everyone. So Holly invited me in honor of Mother's Day to introduce you before you do your talk. So thank you, Holly, and happy Mother's Day, Mom. So I'm excited to do a special introduction for a woman who not only gave me life, but has shown me boundless love and acceptance. My mom, Susan Clinch, knows how to give great gifts, but she's also the very best person to give gifts to. She is so full of animation and gratitude. She somehow knows how to shine the light right back onto you when you're trying to shower her with the love that she deserves. So thank you, Mom, for teaching me to push through the hard times and enjoy the good ones with equal doses of grit, bravery, gentleness, creativity, good humor, and acceptance. So please welcome Susan Clinch.
Thank you, Grace. What a nice surprise. Thank you, Holly. First thank you Holly's going to get from me. I titled this Ultimate Acceptance. When Holly Hogarty asked me if I'd be willing to present a talk on acceptance, I said, sure. I accepted the offer in a passive sort of acceptance. I accepted it as a gift, a sign that I was a true and actual member of this fellowship, which still feels new to me, and I hope it always will. My first thought was, acceptance. That's a good thing, right? Really deep, okay? Especially as compared to tolerance, which we have also been taught always is a good thing. Teach tolerance, the poster said. But do you all remember when you figured out that tolerating something was just putting up with it? You can tolerate, insert here, anything you feel is inferior. Immigrants, gay people, Black people. Do you accept it? Do you consent to receive that experience as equal to your own, a reality as valid as your own? Well, this is binary thinking at its core. To understand something, find something else to compare it to and see how it stacks up. Holly told me that she was once asked to give a talk on a topic. And when she told the asker that she didn't know anything about it, she was told, well, that's why I asked you to do it. And I feel like she gave me the same gift, the opportunity to delve into a topic and learn something new. So thank you again, Holly. My second thought, I had a second one, about acceptance was its importance in the serenity prayer. We all know it, generally consider it good advice. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That accept part always seemed like the hardest to me. So I went to Mr. Google and I discovered that this prayer has evolved over time. I won't take you down the rabbit hole with all the back and forth over who said it first or who said it best. I will just tell you that it's commonly accepted to have come from, I will butcher this German name, Reinhold Niebuhr, close, Niebuhr, a well-known, except to me, American theologian. One of my favorite Niebuhr facts is that Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a student of his at Union Theological Seminary, the school where Jane Wool is now studying. And if you don't know Bonhoeffer, that's a rabbit hole worth going down. The earliest version I could find of his serenity prayer switched the order. In it, courage came first. Give us courage to change what must be altered, serenity to accept what cannot be helped, and the insight to know the one from the other. Not as poetic, is it? I don't think so. I think it was wise to change the order. Until you have accepted the reality of a thing, the courage may or may not be misplaced. Hard to put anything in the change column until you've accepted it as real. So there it is. That's what I knew about the subject right there. Acceptance is better than tolerance, and it makes the serenity prayer work. Well, the serenity prayer was my door into discovering a concept called radical acceptance. As far as I can tell, its origin is in dialectical behavior therapy, proposed by psychologist Marsha Lyman and popularized by Tara Brach in her 2004 book, Radical Acceptance, Embracing Life with the Heart of a Buddha. By that, I mean its origin as a catchphrase. Its origin as an actual thing to think about goes back to at least Plato's time. Radical acceptance does not mean you are agreeing to a situation or an action. It means you are acknowledging that, say, an event happened and is real, which sounds so simple. But as we all know now, it is not. Remember Plato's cave, where the people sat staring at the shadows on the cave wall thinking that was reality? Well, I think we all want to consider ourselves the guy who figured out it was really just shadows. Maybe we'd even like to think we're the guy who climbed out of the cave entirely and saw the sun. There are levels of reality to explore and levels of acceptance. But if we start by radically, actively accepting that we are imperfect beings living in an imperfect world, making the best decisions we can, we will spare ourselves a lot of pain. The metaphor that I use to see the difference between passive and active, simple and radical acceptance, is the wind. I can hug my knees and duck my head and accept that I am buffeted by the wind, or I can stand up with my arms open, facing the wind, accepting the full power and gift of it. It's fitting that we look at this notion of radical acceptance after we have, as a group, considered mindfulness, because it comes from that perspective. It is not a hopeless acceptance of whatever happens. It's not about giving up the ability to make choices. It means we stop trying to make things work the way we want them to work. And in the moment, see as clearly as we can what is real. Lily Tomlin said in The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe that reality is just a collective hunch. And we are living in a weird time when the collective part of that phrase is falling apart. So I think it's wise to occasionally revisit those realities that we have accepted. For instance, take this statement: Black Lives Matter. There was a time when I would have said, and many still say to that, all lives matter. In that reaction, I was refusing to accept an important reality. Well, of course, all lives matter. But if I could not say, Black Lives Matter, period, then I cannot possibly believe the larger reality that all lives matter. So revisiting our realities, good, healthy thing. But then there are the realities that persist, no matter how often you revisit them. The death of a loved one, serious illness, the end of a marriage. You have to accept these truths in order to get through the pain. A wise young friend who has known more loss in her life than I have helped me figure this one out. She said, don't avoid the pain, dive in head first. She was speaking my language, the language of metaphor. She was saying, accept this reality. She knew that lack of acceptance prolongs the pain. And then she said one of the kindest things ever. She said, if you need company, I'll swim with you. The most potent illustration of the power of acceptance in my life was going through the Alzheimer's journey with my mother. Like so many other families, we started out in denial. Oh, she's having senior moments. Mom, you just need to focus, or worse. Surely you remember what happened this morning, that you already ate, who I am. It wasn't until we had a bona fide official medical diagnosis that we were all able to finally accept that she was slipping away from us. That she was, as my dad said, between this world and the next. That's a metaphor that spoke to me, and that I adopted. The most powerful transformation, though, was in my mom. Once she accepted that she was not going to get better, She was able to let go of unrealistic expectations and enjoy whatever was happening right in the moment. A cardinal outside her window would delight her. Snowfall was magical. A beatific peace came over her. I'm so grateful that my entire family managed to achieve acceptance because it allowed us to relax and enjoy our favorite pastime, laughing together. Our story for all ages was about the first acceptance that we need to experience, acceptance of the self. It's great practice for all the things beyond the self that must be dealt with, up to and including what I think of as the ultimate acceptance, the thing that we, or at least I, am always trying to avoid and deflect as I sort through the many situations and relationships that I'm busily trying to deal with. The ultimate reality that refuses to change, no matter how often we revisit it, is death. Death in general, of course, but more to the point, my own personal death. There was a period in my childhood when this thought terrorized me. I would lay awake at night contemplating what not being meant. I would look at people walking around doing normal things and think, don't they know? How can they behave so calmly if they know they're going to die? Well, this came on the heels of my beloved Grandpa Half's death. I was 6 years old, and at the wake, my father hoisted me up so I could see Grandpa in his coffin and offered me the chance to kiss him goodbye. No, thank you. Young as I was, I could plainly see that there was nobody home. The finality, the reality of death was brought home to me that day. Fortunately, my first communion was not far off, so I was soon given a blueprint for understanding death. It wasn't final. Death was followed by eternal bliss. Well, that would be the outcome unless I screwed up. Like if I ate meat on Friday or forgot my chapel veil, coveted my neighbor's goods, whatever that meant. I wasn't as sophisticated as my dad, who could argue with the priest in the confessional about whether a sin was mortal or not. I heard him do this. I totally bought into the heaven-hell dichotomy. I was still troubled by the thought of the end of me. I was just discovering me, and I liked being me. So I am so grateful that I had that religious blueprint. It comforted me. It tided me over until I could read Hermann Hesse, who said, "The call of death is a call of love. Death can be sweet if we accept it as one of the greatest eternal forms of transformation." Until I could read Khalil Gibran, who said, "Life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one." To read Ernest Becker's belief that to live fully is to live with an awareness of the rumble of terror that underlies everything. To discover that the ever quotable Mark Twain said, "I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience." As I read these things, I went from being a frightened child who memorized, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light." I went from that to being a person who collects metaphors, because that's all these things are: theories, metaphors, a collective hunch. We cannot know the thing until we know it. We cannot know death until we die. This is not about understanding the nature of life after death. It is simply accepting that it is inevitable. And we must accept it, or at least I must. I have always thought that this is what Socrates meant if he actually did say the unexamined life is not worth living. Because to examine life ultimately leads you to the realization that it's finite. All we have in this life is time. And as Robin Williams wisely said, time is God's way of keeping everything from happening at once until it stops. For us, at least. I'll let Mary Oliver have the last word. In the summer day, she says, who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I do not know what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Tell me, doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?